everyone. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach. I am your host, Confidence and Mindset Coach Christina Calloway. If you are new here to Conversations with Coach, welcome. This Conversations with Coach is a mindset and confidence podcast where I provide women, athletes, executives, entrepreneurs, founders, and you the confidence you need to reach your goals. Very recently, I just came back from my very first trip to Hawaii. And let me just tell you, it is so true that saying that island time moves so much slower than any other time. Very true. And I had the opportunity to experience that because of my younger sister had an incentive trip through her work where she was recognized for the value that she brings to her organization, along with several other people. A really big deal, and I'm super proud of her. That company employs over 9,000 people, and for her to be selected as one of the employees that they wanted to recognize, it was a huge honor, and I thoroughly enjoyed how everyone came up to her and just thanked her for what she does for the organization. And while I was out there and just reflecting and taking in all of nature's beauty and just what the island itself and the people, the natives, and how they are in their language, and them explaining what their words mean, aloha, and how we got to experience the luau and the dancers and the person who emceed it and explaining their whole entire culture. And it had me to just reflect for myself on mindfulness and being present and what that truly means. And I know that I'm bringing back some coaching techniques for myself as well as for my clients as it relates to how to implement more mindfulness and being present in my everyday today. Speaking of mindfulness, I am super excited about the guests that I have for you this evening. I have for you all the way from the Netherlands. You all know Conversations with Coach is international. And so I am so very excited to have my third international guest to join us in the person of none other than Hester Vaughan. Let me share a little bit about her with you. She is an extraordinary person that I am so happy to personally know. We actually participated in the same coaching certification training, and has been a joy to get to know her even more. And it is an honor to actually have her on my podcast. Hester is a certified executive coach, and she partners with professionals to rediscover their purpose. And maybe if you haven't even discovered it, Hester can help you with that as well. As we know, life can sometimes overwhelm and traumatize us to such an extent that we completely lose sight of our reason for living. And this can take the form of abuse or trauma, whether it be religious, sexual, emotional, or physical, such as a concussion or attack. And sometimes you don't even realize yourself that you are suffering, just that you know something doesn't feel right in my life. Well, I want you to walk alongside Hester and I in this conversation as we help you to rediscover your power and purpose. I want you to go ahead and drop some love in the chat and help me to welcome our guest, Hester Vaughn. Hi, Hester.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How is it over there in the Netherlands?
Cold.
Is it?
Cold, but the sun is shining today, so
that's always good. So, what season is it for you there?
Also winter.
It's winter.
Mm-hmm.
That is so interesting. It's winter here too, but I'm pretty sure our winters are extremely different.
So, it's actually been quite mild, I think, because of global warming. Well, last year this time they had snow at this time of the year, but now everyone's confused. The the trees are blossoming, which is a bit early, but yeah. So it's been a mild winter, but it's still cold for me because I'm used to Africa. So,
Yes, yes. Well, you know what? Maybe we are having some similar weather because things here are a little confusing for Mother Nature out there because we go from here where I live, 70-degree weather, and then literally sometimes in 24 hours, we'll go through 4 different seasons. It'll go from 70 and it'll drop down to below 30. So, you know, go figure that. Well, welcome to Conversations with Coach. And I am super excited, as we were sharing with one another before we started, that this topic that we're going to be talking about in terms of concussions, and I'm super excited for you to share your journey, your personal story with the audience, and just how much information that really isn't shared about concussions or that people aren't aware of as it relates to concussions. As much as you are comfortable with, how you mentioned that you have a personal story as it relates to concussion. Share that with the audience.
great. Thank you, Christina, and thank you for having me. Right. So I was it goes back to childhood. I was a happy-go-lucky youngster. I was very self-expressed. I loved singing and dancing. Well, not dancing. I can't dance. Acting. And when I was very healthy as well. I'd never, ever seen the doctor until I was 14 years old when I fell off a horse and I wasn't wearing a helmet and I had a concussion. I just went to the doctor to actually just check my back because I'd also grazed my back very badly and I'd hurt my back, but I never checked out the concussion. I just know that I had a concussion because my mom is a nurse and she treated me very gently and I lay in bed for a week and I just remember the ticking of the alarm clock actually made me vomit because I was so, yeah. So I know that it was quite bad. But yeah, then fast forward, I finished high school. And then at the age of 20, I was in a head-on collision in a car crash. And it was a bad one. They had to cut me out the car. And it was in the days before, or should I say, in the financial time zone of not having a car with airbags. So I did not have a car with airbags. And I hit my head very, very hard on the steering wheel. And I was taken by ambulance to the hospital and they did do a CT scan. And nothing came up. There was no sign of concussion. They checked my neck, but they said I didn't have any whiplash. And yet I was so bad. I remember my whole face was black and blue for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But, I just was like, I thought, oh, well, there was nothing wrong with me, go on. And I never realized what an impact that actually had on me. So what happened was over the next year, I slid into just into a depression. And it was really hard because I was a very enthusiastic, spirited person, very positive. At the time, we were involved in ministry at church and, it was a faith ministry and, you have to, believe in the best kind of thing. And I just was getting worse and worse. I was very exhausted all the time. And I eventually resigned. I was working at the college at the time, and I resigned because I couldn't work anymore. And at the time, I thought I was just really unhappy. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Anyway, that was the start of it. And I kind of limped. I have limped along ever since then. I'm now 49. And I'm a very strong person. I think that's why we're speaking about the power of resilience. I have pushed through. I have made things happen. I'm still married, which is a miracle after everything that I'm going to tell you. But I've raised 2 children. I've had a couple of businesses. I've gone through a financial crash where we lost everything and started again. But my whole life since then, I had no idea at the time what had happened. What did come up when I was 23 was we discovered that I had a tumor in my head. which is a pituitary prolactinoma. So it's kind of behind your eyes, and it's a tumor that makes too much pregnancy hormone. So it's that what do you call it? It's the pseudo pregnancies, when people actually have a pregnant stomach but they don't have a baby. I can't remember the exact word. Anyway, I had breast milk at the age of 23 and I wasn't pregnant. It was very strange. And I had all these really hectic symptoms. I call them dizzy attacks, where I would just like a slow faint. I could feel myself fainting, and then I would just kind of sort of slide to the ground myself. And I was very depressed, but it was kind of like a hormonal, a sort of a cyclical depression. Absolute chronic fatigue. I once fell asleep on the exercise bicycle at the gym. And I just, you have to make it work. You have to carry on going. You have to carry on with life. My husband is a saint, all the things that he's had. I became just such a sickly person. And, every bug that went round, I would catch the bug. I thought it was stomach bugs. Actually, it was IBS, chronic IBS. Always dizzy. There was just always something wrong with me. It was just, I kind of had that, I thought I was a hypochondriac. I did.
Wow.
And, I saw so many doctors, so many specialists, endocrinologists. I thought it was just, the medication that I was on for the tumor that I had to be on. Just then I had an underactive thyroid, so I was on medication for that. I couldn't sing anymore. By the way, that was another thing. From when I was about 20, I stopped singing. Every time, singing is a hobby of mine. Every time I would sing, after one song, my throat would get sore. And I couldn't sing. Or even if I'd had a busy day at work, because I talk a lot for my work, and at the end of the day, my throat would be sore. So just weird things. And then this year, this was after I had COVID, and then that kick-started a trigeminal neuralgia, which was this terrible, they call it the suicide disease of pain, because my teeth fell out from COVID, my one molar. And so I was on really, really heavy pain medication for that for a year now. And then I saw a physiotherapist, and she was treating me for more aches and pains. There's always something. And as I was talking to her, she said, "You know what, Hester, it actually sounds a bit like you could have post-concussion syndrome." And her partner, it had happened to her. And there's actually very few people who are specialists in this field. So I am so grateful that I happened to come to this physio that knew this. And so I agreed to be tested by her. And they run this whole series of tests on you to check. And she said I was a textbook case. And after just doing all those tests, I was sick for 3 weeks, just completely nauseous, had to sleep all the time. And that was how it triggered me. And that was another sign that I definitely have post-concussion syndrome. And so we worked out that all these things that I have suffered from since I was 20, and it changed my whole personality. That's the other thing I had to tell you. That's why my husband is a saint. I really became this really, sorry, I'm thinking in Dutch now. Really introverted, almost morose, very depressive, just changed my whole personality.
Right.
And it made me so sad. And I've only, now that I'm having rehab, and that's the good news. The good news is you can actually get rehab for this and you can get better. So I've been in a rehabilitation program for 6 months. And you will have noticed the difference in me already in the last few months. I am coming alive again. I have got a lot more strength. My body is stronger. I've had a few flus since I've arrived in the Netherlands, getting used to the new bugs, but I'm kicking them off, whereas normally I would be really so ill from them. And I'm just getting better. So I'm so excited. And now I am on my soapbox because I just want the world to know what can happen from these concussions.
Oh my goodness, that is so amazing how you have just shared this snippet of what you went through or what you are continuing to persevere through, starting at the age of 14 with the very first concussion. And then at the age of 20, the accident that resulted in the second concussion. And it just brings to mind, as we were having that conversation, we all know, and some may not, that concussions are graded in terms of they'll have a grade like a level 1, a level 2, level 3 concussion. And you and I were talking about concussions are often spoken about in terms of severe, less severe, or it wasn't so bad, or that. And I think, and I'm hoping that through your coaching, through your shared story, that it will help people to get a different idea and to get a different mindset, and as it relates to concussion. Because as you have just shared your story, there are long-term effects. I want the audience to really pay attention to what Hester said. When she had her concussions, nothing showed up. Nothing showed up that could say she had one. Even they didn't even at the age of 14 say she had one. Sometimes when we do go, they'll say nothing definitive. However, your symptoms tell us that you have a concussion. And you didn't even get that the first time, because I'm pretty sure that would have been a whole different protocol would have been taken by your mom. And she was the one that said, I'm going to say that you do have one, and therefore we are going to treat it thus and such. Thankfully, thanks to your mom for that. And so with your experience, and you did mention, and what we're getting ready to go into the next topic, talking about the post-concussion syndrome, all of the side effects that came from the concussion, do you know whether it was a buildup from the first one and then you had the second one and it was just a continuous buildup, or do they know?
So they do think, obviously, if you have, the graded ones where you have a really, really bad concussion that actually shows up on a CT scan, they know about those. What they are only starting to learn about now, and the science is only about 10 years old. So there are a lot of people like me walking around suffering that don't know why they are feeling this way. So they are saying that, especially when you've had a couple of knocks to the head when you are young, as a child, and I'm pretty sure I got knocked over on the playground and hit my head really hard. I remember once when I was about 10 as well, and remember like almost seeing stars. Just a couple of knocks on the head, and it doesn't happen to everyone. So I don't want to make everybody afraid that, wrap your kids in cotton wool. But there are a significant percentage of people that when they have had a couple of, and they say from the second, that you have this syndrome that happens. And the scary thing is, Christina, the symptoms aren't there straight away. So especially the effect on the hormones, which is where the tumor came from. My pituitary tumor, because your pituitary gland is the one that regulates your growth hormone and your pregnancy hormone. And so they say that what happens with the concussion is your brain gets shaken, and it loses the pathways, the messaging systems. So between your body and your brain and your neck, and your brain and your body no longer knows where it's sitting, and those pathways don't automatically rebuild. So sometimes, in most people they do, but in others they don't. Right. And that's why you need rehabilitation. Right. But it doesn't show up. Sometimes it only shows up a year.
Right.
The scary thing.
Right.
A year after you've had your concussion. So that's why it's taken so long for this to come up in science. Right. No one would have put two and two together. Like, that was a bump you had a year ago, and now you're displaying these symptoms. Right. Now you're correlating the two. And that's what happens with multiple smaller concussions that happen.
Right, exactly. And you brought up a very good point. And what I want the audience to also recognize too, concussions do not just happen when you hit your head. I have worked with athletes and I have coached athletes. They never hit their head. However, they did suffer a concussion because of a hard jarring, a hard snapping of the neck. And
Absolutely.
especially when you're working with children whose brain has not filled in the skull, it is still moving around. And
Yes.
just as Hester said, it's even when the brain, you think of it, the brain is knocking up to the front of the skull. And so it's getting, that's the whiplash part of the brain, not just your neck, but your brain is being slid forward to that's that impact. So something that can be as small as you seeing your child fall, but their head moves kind of violently forward or back. You want to look at how severe the fall was, not so much did they hit their head. While hitting their head is very important, sometimes it's the non-hitting of the head that also needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
And the neurons is what you were talking about, running through the top of the brain. And they're getting off of their pathway from being able to fire and communicate to the other parts of the body to do the bodily functions and making sure that they work. So if you're a parent of an athlete, parent of non-athletes, parents of toddlers who are busy and they're always over the place, and every time, one minute you're looking at them and the next minute they're climbing up on top of something. Or again, we're not talking about wrapping them in bubble wrap. We're just talking about being aware so that in the event that they do have a fall, that you know what to report and be an advocate. I have another guest that's going to be coming up later in a future episode that talks about her son falling out of a shopping cart, hitting the floor hard, and she had to fight the hospital to even, they wouldn't even diagnose him as having a concussion, and he did. So I want you to share a little bit more about the post-concussion syndrome before we go right into our last topic, which is the power of resilience.
Sure. So what is really interesting and absolutely mind-blowing, excuse the pun, is that it can affect the 4 different areas of your body. So it's your autonomic nervous system. So that's those pathways. So it's your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. So your parasympathetic is your rest and digestive system, and the sympathetic is that fight or flight, and it can affect all of those areas. So where people are mostly having trouble, or you can have it in all, you can have it in one. So it can be your digestive system, IBS. That was me. And is still me. Lots of IBS. It can be in your cognitive, so trouble with reading, memory, brain fog, even tripping. I crab walk all the time. I can't look behind me while I'm walking, or I'll completely lose my, just where I am in the world. The mood-related one, which I already touched on, and the just personality changes and depression that can happen. And then the blood dysregulation. So that's got to do with sensitivity to light and sound, neck pain. That's why it's always very important when you are being treated to also treat your neck at the same time. There's such a correlation between the two. So and the point that I really want to bring home is, especially when you are not being heard by doctors, because a lot of doctors don't know this. They literally do not know this. There are so few specialists worldwide that know about this. To just keep pushing and pushing until you find someone that can hear you and that will take you seriously, especially with young girls, because of the hormones and the fact that it can show up so much later. I think mine even started from that first concussion at 14, because my period stopped when I was about, about 16 or 17. They were very irregular. So there was a mess with my hormones then already. And you don't automatically go, did you hit your head or did you have a whiplash?
No,
you don't even do that. And
you do not. No.
And just so that parents are aware, and even you aware for yourself, if something is not right, don't just accept it. For so long, I just lived with not being well. I just was, this is my lot in life, and I'm boring myself with my symptoms. I'm not going to tell anyone else about it anymore. That there is hope, that there really is hope that you can get better.
That's great. And thank you for putting the emphasis on being your own self-advocate and just keep searching until you can find someone who hears you, which is what one of my previous guests did speak to. Talk about, you are super resilient. Obviously, you have fought through 2 concussions and everything that comes along with that to get to where you are now, a certified executive coach. You have relocated your family with your family, and you are now back in another back in the Netherlands. You were in South Africa, and you're back there now. And you did mention in the beginning about everything that you have been going through, dealing with that before you actually found someone who would listen to you. You were dealing with it on your own. Talk about the importance and the mindset of having that power of resilience. What did you find? Where did you find that from?
Good question. If we could bottle it and sell it, that would all make a lot of money. I think it just comes from a deep belief, just that there was something more. From a young girl, I had this a spiritual connection, and it's kind of just pulled me through all the bad times. I just, I couldn't give up, even though many times I felt like giving up. They've been quite a few times, and sometimes that I thought I can't believe I haven't died from the stress yet. But there was just something pulling me or inviting me, should I say. It was very gentle, just in an invitation of, there is something better, there is something more.
Right.
And I think it's that, so many of us are living these such hard lives and such lives of just surviving. And I am one of them. I was one of them. And I just, our lives are so precious, and we only have one of them.
Only one.
And you are the only one, like you were saying about being your self-advocate. No one is knocking on your door and going, come on now, live better, have more joy, have more fun, or you can have more of a life. No one is doing that. So you have to be that person. And so I think that's just where the self, I won't even call it self, but the resiliency, it's a skill, Christina. It's something that you can develop. And unfortunately, you develop it by going through hard times. That's the bad part. You can't learn it when everything is cozy. So it's the one good thing. And I remember once somebody saying to me, when you're going through a hard time, while you're going through the hard time, you think you are dying. You think you are failing miserably. It's a mess. Everything is a mess. And you have these terrible thoughts. But when you are through it and you look back, you suddenly go, damn, where did that strength come from? There's another level that's built in me that I didn't know was there. And the next time I deal with somebody that's in my space or breaking my boundaries down or wanting to, or, there's the strength that suddenly comes forward. And that's just, what, sometimes you just have to show up. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't have to be a hero to be resilient. Right. You just have to keep showing up. And sometimes,
I love that.
Sometimes you are wounded and bandages and scabs and scratches, but just keep showing up. And resilience gets deposited in you, which is amazing.
I love that. I love it. Just keep showing up, battle wounds and all, and the resilience gets deposited in you. I absolutely love it. I have enjoyed having you here today, Hester, and hearing about your story, hearing about more information about concussion. And I thank you so much for providing that to the listening audience. And I am going to do, as I always do, I do a call to action. So those of you in the listening audience, get ready. Hester has taken a giant step for her in joining our social media world. And so all of you that are watching this now and that will watch the recording after we go live, I want you to hurry on over to her social medias and start following her and then sharing it. You can find her on Instagram, and all of this is going to be in the show notes. So never worry, I always provide you with the information. You can go back and find it in the show notes. But this is her Instagram handle. It's Hester Vaughn. And make sure that you put an A in between the H and the N on Vaughn. She has a unique spelling of her name because she is a unique person. And then on Facebook, you're going to find her at Hester.Von Vaughn. I hope I didn't butcher that.
No, you did very well.
Thank you. And she is also on LinkedIn. And I remember I shared with you all last week that LinkedIn is not just about finding a job. LinkedIn is about finding your person and your community and all things that we just talked about. You can schedule your clarity call. She's probably, because she's in the Netherlands, it's going to be on WhatsApp, but hey, that's okay. We are in a global world now, and you can get in touch with Hester and get more information, because if something resonated with you in terms of what she said, you definitely you're like, wait a minute, maybe that after all these years, and I remember having this, I need to reach out to her. You can also go to her brand new website. Actually, today is the birthday of her brand new website, so be sure to check that out. It is Your Journey for Life, and I love the name of her website because it just embodies everything that she shared with us this evening. Hester, I have thoroughly enjoyed you once again, and I always have a final thought that I would like to leave with the listening audience, but I don't provide it. My guests provide it through this question. What is the one mindset shift as it relates to concussions and the power of resilience that you would like to leave with the audience?
Right. Gosh, throw us in the deep end, Christina.
Yeah.
The one mindset final thoughts. Not to accept less than 100%. So don't settle for a half-baked, half-sick life. Take yourself seriously and stand for 100% wellness. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Hester. So you all heard it from Hester. Changing your mindset and getting that shift in terms of your power of resilience means not accepting anything but 100% wellness. Mm-hmm. And with that, this brings us to another end of Conversations with Coach and my special guest, all the way from the Netherlands, Hester Vaughn. Hester, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Christina. It was wonderful.
It's my pleasure. I'm going to say goodbye to my audience, and I'll be right back with you. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. It was very informational, and there were lots of little nuggets dropped in there. Be sure that you share it, and be sure that you follow Hester on all of her social medias and reach out to her if you connected in some way. Of course, you know where to find me. You're here already. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, YouTube, and they're all at Christina Mindset Coach. And if you would like to connect and schedule your clarity call with me, you can go on my website to do that as well. It has been my pleasure to bring this episode to you, but I don't want to leave you without a positive thought, as I always do. And that is going to be this evening. I want to say, being challenged in life is inevitable. Being defeated is optional. And with that, I'll see you here next week, same time, same place. Good night.